Can you remember the last time North Carolina was defense first?
That's probably been a little bit. I still think I'd push back a little bit on this UNC team being uh, defense first. They're pretty good on both ends,
Oh, I'm
but
not knocking their offense. I just think the
yeah,
defense is the best part of them.
it might be, which is, I mean, it's a little interesting because if you think about them from a personnel standpoint, their best lineup right now, is not the biggest lineup, right? Like it's Harrison Ingram at the four. It's two small guards with RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau. And then Armando Bacot, anchoring the defense. And he's turned into be like, I think under Hubert Davis, Armando has turned into being a pretty good like defensive anchor. They use him in a lot of drop coverage,
Mm-hmm.
which means when they're guarding pick and roll, Armando Bacot is usually several steps below the level of the screen. And when they get those screens on the side, UNC is going to try to ice or down them to keep the action on that side of the court. So it's just like real sort of fundamental pick and roll defense and keeping your biggest guy in the paint and then having your guards and your wings work hard to get over screens so they can stay attached to the ball handler when they come off the screen and there isn't a screen defender right there. Because again, Baycot's in the paint. I do think it's probably flown a little under the radar, but like Cormac Ryan was a defensive stopper,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe stopper is like an extreme use, but like he was basically the best perimeter defender the last few years at Notre Dame under Mike Brey. So like I
Well,
think
that's like saying I'm the tallest guy in my family, Brian.
fair, but that's a deep. It's a you
Right.
gotta your family's shorter than UNC's backcourt gold. But you've got but with that you've got a guy that's like knows how to play a couple different coverage types, and you've got a guy that's also pretty good at working hard to get over screens without fouling, which like that was a huge part. That was like the fundamental principle of Mike Brey's defense was no stupid fouls. And I think that probably flew under the radar a little bit with the addition of Ryan, was that like UNC went
Right.
out and got like a pretty good wing defender. Um, but so yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because their lineup flexibility is different now with Withers. He came off the bench against State, didn't play all that much. Teams are not having to guard him when he's spaced out at the four. And so by moving Ingram from the three to the four, then UNC can has a better half court offensive lineup on the court, and it can still obviously control the glass with Ingram and Baycott.
I also like Trimble, and the way they have deployed
Yeah,
him
yeah.
defensively. And I think, look, maybe I'm overselling it because it wouldn't be the first time that I've done that where I latch on to something that I believe to be true and then drive it home. I am going to turn the narrative into this North Carolina team is a gritty team, right? Again, this is not something that we are normally used to. Normally, it's pretty offense. How do you keep up with them scoring? Keep going fast, get out and run. And we'll do the best we can defensively. Somebody's going to go for a career high from 3-point range against them normally. But I just think that they have
Yeah.
so many ways to stop you, whether it's and they're not a great offensive rebounding team either. That's the thing. They're okay.
Well, yeah,
But it's not
that
it's not their specialty like it normally is.
yeah, that's actually what I was going to say. And just real quickly, first off, yeah, I like Trimble a lot. He's like really important for them just in terms of like a length athleticism standpoint in the backcourt. Like they really need him. And he's a solid like third guard off the bench. But yeah, usually when you think of UNC as being like gritty, because I think of their 2017 title team as being that, but it was mash you on the offensive glass. It was
Yeah.
an offensive rebound. They're going to rebound 40 whatever percent of their misses. This season, they're under 33%.
Yeah.
They really only have one guy that hits the glass, and that's Baycott. He's an elite offensive rebounder, and also he's very good at drawing fouls. And like his ability to draw fouls is huge for them in terms of the half court offense. He's really the one guy that can do that at a like a high clip. NC State's best low post guy, DJ Burns, he's incredible. He's a huge talent, but Baycott almost draws fouls at a rate that's almost double Burns. That's because like he's a guy that he plays physical going towards
Right.
the rim, whereas DJ is incredible. He's sort of best by throwing in like weird hook shots and flinging out skip passes and doing those kinds of things.
According to Bart Torvik, North Carolina's defense, adjusted defensive efficiency, better than their offense. I'm just saying. I'm not. I'm not trying to compare size of basketball brains because I cannot compete with yours, Brian. But
I would only say my guess is that opponents won't shoot 29% on threes all season against UNC, and at some
right.
point that number will jump up a little bit, and that defensive efficiency will probably like some of this is just like is shooting luck to an extent, but no, they played a great defensive game against State, but NC State missed how many open looks on spot up threes that Burns kicked out to last night? Like if three or not 2 nights ago, and if two of
Right.
those or three more of those go in, it totally flips the game.
So let me ask you about the game, because this is the way I looked at it. Because I've said this you've heard me say this. I think great defense has a cumulative effect. That if I'm defending you well, 7 straight possessions, maybe I slip up on the 8th, but because I have defended you so well, you're sped up a little bit. I felt like NC State played the first 10 or 11 minutes of the second half when the game was there. They could have had a more positive impact on the way that game was ultimately going to play out. And State just rushed everything. They were not in balance when they took shots. Some good shots were just hoisted up early in shot clocks. And I wouldn't even call them good shots. I would call them acceptable shots or open shots. But they were not in rhythm. I thought they were rushed the entire second half, and they gave away some opportunities that they normally wouldn't have. I think that had a lot to do with UNC's defense. I'm going to keep trying to sell this line, Brian. I appreciate you sticking to your guns.
I'm with you. Like I'm with you, but like it and in like early in the second half, to the point of being sped up, there was an exchange probably about 4 or 5 minutes. I think UNC was up probably 5 or 7 points, something like that. State played probably its best defensive possession of the game, just like a perfect, 25 to 30 seconds worth of defense. UNC misses a shot. State runs the ball down, drag screen action. DJ Burns seals, and either Horn or Taylor throws it to him in the post. And DJ Burns I thought he played pretty well offensively the other night. He misses a layup that he probably makes goal probably 98 out of 100 times. And then UNC rebounds the miss. They go down. RJ Davis, drains a 3.
Yeah. Pull up 3.
It was a 5-point swing. A 5-point swing in the span of 10, 15 seconds. And that was one of those moments where it's just like, man, if State's going to actually, pull off the upset tonight, you just can't have that was such a huge leverage hinge moment of the game. I think my biggest gripe with with State in terms of their managing of pace in that game, though, was it took State so long. I think it was probably 7 or 8 minutes into the game before they threw out their first press. They were not, and part of that was they weren't making shots.
Yeah.
But they weren't ready for UNC to get to the secondary break and push after misses. And that's just something it's tough to stop, and UNC's got great guards, but it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like something that State wasn't ready for. And it's a nice counter that UNC has, because NC State presses a lot. They use the press to force a lot of turnovers or to force teams to play late into the shot clock, and then they can run off those plays. And State's not a great half court offense, especially when the jumpers aren't falling. And so they need that transition game that's juiced up by the press, and it didn't really hit the other night.
I agree, 100% agree. See, we found agreement. All right,
Perfect.
as I transition to Duke, we have just a few more minutes left. But I'm going to tack on one more North Carolina thing here as we get to Duke. RJ Davis. To me, the difference, that game was defined by one team had RJ Davis and the other didn't, because I think he does so many things at important times. That 3 that you mentioned, before it left his hand, I was watching it with my 15-year-old, and I'm like, this is in. You can tell when he is about to make that shot, and he can beat you in a whole bunch of different ways. Davis or Kyle Filipowski right now, who is the ACC's Player of the Year?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's Filipowski, pretty convincingly, and that's nothing against R.J.
Right.
Davis. Like, I think he's been the like 1A 1B best guard in the league, along with maybe Judah Mintz
Mm-hmm.
up at Syracuse. And I thought Elliot Cadeau played awesome for
He
UNC. That was
did.
maybe his best game he's had as a Tar Heel. But no, Filipowski, and for the simple reason that he is doing something that I don't think anyone else in the country is doing, where he is orchestrating Duke's half court offense from every spot on the court as a 7-foot center, whether it's the high post at the elbow, it's above the break on pick and pops, it's in the post, and him having to like work around double teams and opponents sagging off Mark Mitchell, and like what he's doing, mapping the floor and spraying passes around, often for Jared McCain threes or to Mark Mitchell in the dunker spot for a finish at the rim. But it's not just that. Duke's now probably I would guess, top 12, top 15 in defensive efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And he's anchoring the defense for them. It's the rebounds, it's the rim protection. The block numbers are up. He's still getting
Yep.
steals at a high rate this year too, which is part of his game. He gets a lot of deflections, and those can often translate into steals. But I think I brought this up last Friday, Gold. Like, they're able to guard pick and roll every different way they need to be able to do it. And it's because of Filipowski. He can switch out onto opposing guards like he did against Bub Carrington, who's an NBA
Mm-hmm.
player for Pittsburgh. He can be in the drop. He can be up at the level. He can hedge. He's just doing everything for them. He's expending a ton of energy on both sides of the court. I just don't think anyone's being asked to totally like carry an offense and anchor a defense in the way that Filipowski is, and he's doing that and putting up monster numbers at super high efficiency. Like, I think he's the player of the year in the country personally.
Maybe.
So just beyond the ACC, but Davis is awesome too. And look, Baycott has probably like an outside shot at player of the year from like a statistical standpoint as well.
Yeah, if it comes down to stats, I don't know how you're going to top Kyle Filipowski.
He's insane,
He
dude.
does everything.
He's insane.
And watching him go 4 for 4 from deep at Pitt, and I know they mentioned it.
Yeah.
I don't know how you deal with that as an opposing defense if he is going to pick and then pop out to the 3-point
Yeah.
line and knock that down. You
You can try to switch, but then you're going to put a guard on him, and he's going to just maul that person in the post. Like, he's a total matchup destroyer. Like, he
No.
is absolutely a problem because he's huge. He can shoot, he can really pass, and he can dribble. He scores from everywhere. Like, they use him the way that like they would use Ben Caro if they played Paolo at like small ball center more that season. But like, he's being applied in very similar ways.
And Jared McCain is shooting a high percentage from three. So is Jeremy Roach. Filipowski, I mean, they shot a high percentage from three against Pitt. So they were 8 of 14 in the first half at that. And, it's weird. We're going to close on this and apologize for other things that we didn't get to today, but we'll get to them next week. We're going to do this every Friday with Brian. The margin that they created, the score, the margin in the game, which ended the game, to me was their defense was great, but that's not a 48-23 game at the half unless they go bonkers from 3-point range, and it was really over at halftime. In some ways, it was deceiving, even though Duke was so much better. That score could have been way worse than it actually was. I'll be curious to see if they can do that again without destroying the Nets from 3-point range, because they're not going to be a 70% 3-point shooting team. So
yeah, but you can go to the game right before that on the road at Notre Dame.
Right.
Proctor doesn't score. Jared McCain has an off game until he gets like a little hot down the stretch. Filipowski didn't score until the second half. They scored under 1 point per possession in that game. They were 13 of 33 on twos, and they still won.
Right.
Like, against the Notre Dame team that, like, by the way, recently hasn't been too bad. Almost beat NC State, beat Virginia, and just beat Georgia Tech too. So, like, I think they can. I think because the defense is rounding into form, and that's a huge part of Filipowski and Jared McCain also just like playing better on that side of the court, that like Duke has the ability to win ugly too.